So we've got here a fairly straightforward closed mouth. Now, I say straightforward, I actually find a closed mouth more difficult, potentially more difficult than an open mouth. Because with an open mouth, as you'll see in the next study, you've got some nice darks that help to negatively describe the shape of the lips. You've got to be quite careful with a closed mouth, with the shape of the lips, and particularly as it's defined by the line that runs between them. The other thing with ink as well, when you're drawing lips with ink, I find that less tends to be more. So for this area, for example here, we're going to leave this as the white of the paper, but we don't want too many marks, too much shade, and I think less definitely is more. What you'll often notice as well is that one lip, usually the top lip, is darker than the bottom lip because it's in shadow. So if you defocus your eyes, you can see that the value of this top lip as a whole is generally darker than the bottom lip as a whole. And that makes it a little bit easier for you to distinguish the two shapes. So if you see that, take advantage of it. So the way that I'm going to approach this is the same as I've approached the other studies that we've done, and think about contours. So this top lip, I'm going to think about how the lines should describe the way that this lip sort of goes inwards. So it's this shape here. And then the bottom lip is going to curve outwards. So that sort of shape there. So let's start with the top lip. So I've got the smallest pen again, 0.25, 0.3, something of that nature is good. And I'm going to do the lines in this direction, which help to describe this plane. And these small lines here, they give you a clue as to the nature of the angle that you want to be doing your lines. So if we keep consistent with those, we won't go too far wrong. And what I don't want to do, or what I want to avoid doing, is outlining the lips with the pen. So creating an outline there. If somebody's wearing lipstick, normally that is the case. If they've got lip liner on, you can outline them. But I just want to try and use the hatching marks. If I can, I might need to put a bit of an outline here and there just to tidy things up. But I want to just see if I can use the marks to describe the outer edge rather than just lazily putting a line in and drawing an outline. And then for the bottom lip, let's think about the shape of this, and let's break this down into a couple of different planes. So I've got a plane here, so I'm going to draw over the photograph that is that sort of shape, and then a plane that goes down there, and then one that curves under. So the shape of the lip is like that sort of plane. Down there, that makes sense. So that's the way that I'm going to try and make my marks. But what I want to remember is that this area is in the light, so I want very few, if any, marks here. There's a little bit of shadow, so I can put my marks there, and then again there's shadow underneath. So let's put these top marks in first. So remembering the plane, the angle of those lines. I'm going to have to do several layers of these just to build them up. And then what I'm going to do is just bring one or two down and around, and then there's some shadow area under there, so you can see how I've now adjusted the shape of those marks to describe the shape of that plane, that part of the mouth. And then we've got a nice dark area in here, and this describes the end of the top lip. So we'll put that in. And then where we see these dark shadow areas, let's put those in just so we can start to get the separation between the lips. Just putting some more information in that's easy to see, easy to distinguish, building up that puzzle. A little bit of tone on the end there, just softening off. And then we've got this shadow area underneath the bottom of the lip as well. So we could put that in as a contour. I'm just going to put this in as some diagonal lines just to change things up. I'll block that in just roughly for now. Okay, and now it's just a case of building up the values. So you can defocus your eyes, have a look for where the strongest values are. If you notice, this area here is quite a strong value. I've got a shadow or a highlight that is in there, so we've got to add some value so we can distinguish that. So I'm going to start with the top lip. I'm going to try and keep the marks the same, but all I'm doing, same angle, all I'm doing is just building up another layer, starting from the bottom and working up, because it's going to be darker towards the centre of the mouth. So if I start at the bottom and work up, I'm always going to end up with a darker value at that bottom piece. And what we can do is just put a few diagonal cross hatches in. So you don't need to think that every single line, every single mark has to go in the direction of the plane. As long as you've got some in there, and if they're dominant, certainly that's going to help strengthening those contours. Shorter marks towards the bottom of the lip, so that area is darker. So now I'm just going to add a few lines to this bottom lip, and that's going to help to negatively draw in this area here that I'm going to leave white. So just doing another layer on top of what I've already done there, and that's just going to help to strengthen that top plane, that top shadow plane. Do a bit of cross hatching just at the bottom there, just to help give the sense of it being darker underneath, darker shadow underneath. But it's just right at the very bottom there. And then we can just add a little bit more work, maybe a bit of cross hatching just to the shadow. Okay, I said I wasn't going to outline the top edge, but I just think that it would benefit with some stronger value just where that edge has lost a little bit too much at the top there. So there we go, there's a fairly standard mouth. Actually a little bit more difficult than it might first appear, because you've not got a lot to work with. There's not a lot of shadows in there. There's not a lot of darks to define the upper and the lower lip. So let's move on to one now that on the face of it looks more complicated, but I actually think you'll find easier.